Stimați invitați, cea de-a doua sesiune tematică este dedicată noii realități strategice a regiunii noastre. Discuțiile vor fi moderate de doamna Ana Tinca, secretar de stat pentru afaceri strategice.
Good afternoon, dear ministers, distinguished colleagues, distinguished participants. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you at the second session of the annual meeting of Romanian ambassadors. This is the session dedicated to regional and international security, and this is a recurrent subject in such meetings, but for the fourth time in a row, the topic is the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the war that is ravaging our neighbor. And in the meantime, because of the Russian aggression, our region has become like a gauge, if you want, of the push and pull of the forces who would like to reshape the future of security in Europe and beyond. But let us make no mistake. Those who claim that we need to change European security are not proposing anything new. They are revisionist. Russia's objectives have not changed, and what Russia is actually proposing is getting back to the way of doing business from the 19th century, coupled with rewriting history as a state policy. Maybe the only newer feature is that Russia is trying to bring to Europe remote actors that have really no vocation to bring anything good in European security. To discuss the current situation and its implication, we really have an impressive panel. And we have already on the stage the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, Oana Țoiu, and she will be joined through VTC by the High Representative Kaja Kallas and the Deputy Secretary General of NATO, Radmila Shekerinska. But we are off to a really good start because our first guest speaker, our guest is Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Radosław Sikorski. Deputy Prime Minister, welcome and thank you very much for your presence today. Radoslav Sikorski does not need an introduction and certainly not with Romanian diplomats. But for the scope of our discussion, let me remind ourselves that Radoslav Sikorski is someone who has fought autocratic regimes and autocracy his entire professional life. As a journalist in Soviet-occupied Afghanistan, as a reformer in post-communist Poland, and now as a leading voice in Polish and European politics, he stood as a firm supporter of democratic resilience and of a united Europe who does not flinch in the face of coercion. He is someone who called out the Russian aggression early on, long before it became conventional wisdom. He has the reputation of someone who does not mince his words, and he sets the record straight. I'm sure that the Romanian ambassadors are looking forward to his intervention, but to frame our discussion, it is my great pleasure to give the floor to Oana Țoiu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania. Madam Minister, you started your mandate with a NATO summit, with a NATO-Ukraine Council, then you visited Chișinău, Cernăuți, Odessa and Kiev. I think that this sequence speaks in itself about the priorities of the new president and of the new government of Romania. Without further ado, Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and we will also be at the end of August together with President Nicu Șordan in Chișinău, again celebrating together with our sister country the National Day of Romanian language. Thank you, Radek, for taking the time and being here together with us. I think it is clear now for everyone in our diplomatic team that what is happening in the region, Romania's role in it, and specifically the eastern flank countries' response and solutions are relevant for the conversations we have in absolutely any country we are present in. This has become a global priority, and it is especially important for us that we synchronize better, not just in an EU format, not just in a NATO format, but as neighbors and as countries that understand not just the current challenge, but the lessons that history has been so clear on. And we are not sure this is the case for other countries that have not felt it so directly on their own soil, in their own history, in their own conflicts and solutions. And I was speaking recently with Polish friends, and we were reminded that now the topic that is on everyone's panel, on every conversation, security guarantees and alliances in that direction, is a topic that for Romania and Poland has been present in our political decisions and even in the alliances we made with each other even 100 years ago. And in that sense, I think it is timely that we make sure we have this conversation in this large format with all our diplomatic team to understand better what is it that we need to do together more in one sense, but also because Romania is looking always to what we're doing together in a new format, and we're always going to remain strong supporters of a strong European Union. We're always strong supporters of the EU accession of our neighbors, but we're also always looking with significant attention to what Poland is doing and how is it that we can find complementarities to our approaches. And that would be my question to you as well from Poland's side. How is it that you're looking at Romania's role, Romania's solution, and our Black Sea presence, and how is it that we can enhance more our regional perspective within the common decisions that we're taking in the coalition of the willing, the EU format, and NATO? Thank you so much, Radek, for taking the time and being here with us in this necessary conversation.
It's my turn to speak, right? Just to let you know that we cannot see you on our screen, so perhaps you need to switch your camera on. But dear Minister Tsoyu, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to be invited to speak at the Romanian Global Ambassadors Conference. I regret that other commitments have prevented me from being with you in person, but as you know, in these turbulent times, the foreign ministers' schedules are like the weather on Moldovanu Peak, which I'm told is unpredictable and changing. The stakes of our diplomatic mission are getting higher. Only a few weeks ago, Poland's ambassadors came here to Warsaw to attend our own annual conference. Concerns we discussed back then are similar to those you're grappling with. Back in 2019, in his address delivered on the eve of Romania's first ever EU presidency, the then president of the European Council and now Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, offered his perspective, quote, "Remember that there will always be challenges, and sometimes light does not come from light, but from darkness." Tusk said, quoting Mircea Eliade in Romanian. He then followed with another compelling idea, this time by the former Romanian Foreign Minister Andrei Pleșu. When all obstacles seem like walls, the issue is to treat them as mirrors or windows. Beautifully cryptic. The world is in flux. As every major change, this one represents both a threat and an opportunity. Russia's war against our mutual neighbor, Ukraine, remains the greatest challenge to both of our countries. Contrary to pro-Russian narratives, it is not only a territorial dispute or a regional squabble. It is a proxy war against the collective West. Putin's aggression is not just undermining Europe's security architecture. It's reshaping the global one. Major changes are unfolding before our eyes. Let me name just a few. This destabilization and ever-growing number of armed conflicts all over the world, from Sudan through the Middle East, Caucasus to the Far East, which consume the attention and the resources of our major allies, particularly the United States. Escalation in using violence, both military and economic, as a foreign policy instrument. Growing appeal of authoritarianism as an allegedly better alternative to liberal democracy. Increasing popularity of strongman rule, even among citizens of democratic states, based on a false idea that authoritarian governments are better equipped to secure order. Only a decade or so ago, democracies tried to shape the world by meddling in autocracies' internal affairs. We promoted democracy. Now it's the other way around. Autocracies are on the offensive to undermine confidence in our political system, and are unfortunately quite successful. Traditional alliances are shifting. China's influence is rising, fueled by three major external factors: Russia's dependence on Beijing, Europe's existential focus on Ukraine, and our inability to quickly coordinate our actions, and last but not least, America's ongoing recalibration. We're being told in no uncertain manner that the United States cannot devote most of its time and resources to dealing with European issues. As Marco Rubio said, other priorities to focus on, the United States has. I agree, the only truly global superpower has global responsibilities, and the number of flashpoints, it seems only to be growing. Washington communicates this repeatedly and openly. Quote, "We're here today to directly and unambiguously express that stark strategic realities prevent the United States from being primarily focused on the security of Europe." End quote. Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth announced in Brussels already in February. Vice President Vance said, quote, "Europe's entire security infrastructure has been subsidized by the United States of America." He added that it's neither in Europe's nor in America's interest for Europe to be a permanent security vassal of the United States, end quote. And President Trump, as you know, has repeatedly accused Europe of freeloading and taking advantage of his country. Many Europeans, myself included, do not like what we hear, but we must not pretend that we cannot hear it. This is a painful lesson in realpolitik, one, in my view, long overdue. Ladies and gentlemen, Poles and Romanians need no convincing that security matters. We fully understand what follows when an aggressor is allowed to triumph. We know that Russian imperialism is a beast whose appetite grows with what it feeds on. The more land Putin gets, the more brazenly he'll demand more. The same is true for our other mighty adversaries, trying to prey on what they see as our weaknesses. Either Europe will be able to beef up its defense capabilities, stand up united, and prove ready to defend its collective interests, or it will be relegated to the margins of the re-emerging global powers competition. Quote, "We affirm that our states share common views and deep concerns regarding the recent security crisis in Europe, particularly in light of the Russian Federation's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. Only through joint coordinated efforts can we effectively overcome the challenges we face and ensure peace, stability, and prosperity for our nations." End quote. It came from Chernivtsi Declaration, signed this month by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Moldova, and Romania. Europe is mortal. A great philosopher, Raymond Aron, warned in his sobering book, In Defense of Decadent Europe. We should be blunt with ourselves. In order to survive and to matter, we must together adapt to an increasingly dangerous environment. This is why security, Europe, was the priority theme of Poland's recent EU presidency. The presidency ended, but the motto remains fitting. It should become one of the Union's guiding principles for decades to come. The EU is sometimes referred to as a regulatory or even lifestyle superpower. Rightly so. Europe's continuous appeal is reflected in how many people across the globe would like to make it their home. Soft power, however, will matter little if it is not backed up by hard power, including by military might. Without a safe and secure Europe, efforts to develop our economies and cultures will be akin to painting rooms in a house which somebody is trying to set on fire. European security must come first. Ladies and gentlemen, in the wake of World War II, both Americans and Europeans came to realize the great benefits of transatlantic cooperation. One of the European Union's founding fathers, Paul-Henri Spaak, believed that peace and unity in Europe required close military cooperation, not only across the Atlantic, but also on our continent. This clear-eyed and forward-looking vision made him an ideal and ultimately successful candidate for NATO Secretary General. Back then, advancing European integration and championing transatlantic cooperation were not seen as competing, but compatible. And in my view, they remain so. We need to strengthen both European defense capabilities and NATO as a whole. It seems obvious to countries on the EU's eastern flank. Almost nobody in Romania or Poland would contest NATO's crucial role in our security framework. Nearly 90% of Romanians believe that NATO membership is essential for the country's national security. Polls are in full agreement. Opinion polls produce virtually identical results. But there are still some in the transatlantic community who seem not to be fully aware of the strategic interdependence between a strong Europe and a strong NATO. I consider it a mission of our countries and of our regional formats, such as the Bucharest Nine, to spare no efforts in persuading anyone who still harbors doubts that the EU and NATO are not competing but complementary organizations. Investments in defense capabilities in any European NATO member, as well as joint investments in collective military capabilities on the continent, make NATO stronger. The Mihail Cogălceanu Air Base is a perfect example. It is undergoing a multi-billion euro expansion and modernization. The aim is to transform it into NATO's largest airbase in Europe. It will cover roughly, I'm told, 2.8 thousand hectares, about double the size of Germany's Ramstein, to date Europe's largest NATO facility. Transformed into a super hub, it will be capable of hosting up to 10,000 NATO troops, supporting advanced air and ground operations and long-term deployments. Our many investments in military bases across Poland serve the same purpose. We are building new deployable air-based system support, storage facilities, and bulk fuel storage that will further increase readiness of the Polish and US air forces in Central and Eastern Europe. Bucharest and Warsaw speak with one voice when it comes to European and NATO unity, as well as transatlantic military collaboration. Our bilateral relations are a role model for others. The agreement on defense industry cooperation we signed shortly after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine is but one example, but there are more. In 2017, Romanian armed forces deployed a component of approximately 120 soldiers to Bemowo-Piskie in Poland to reinforce a forward land forces battle group. Since in the same year, a Polish military contingent of approximately 230 soldiers, part of the multinational brigade Southeast, was serving in Craiova. Last May, Romania hosted the NATO Dacian Spring 2025 exercise, in which Polish soldiers also took part. As the two biggest NATO Eastern Flank nations, we have to make sure others in the alliance understand the gravity of the moment. Emil Cioran famously said, "Nimeni nu se poate bucura de libertate fere ne tremure." In English, no one can enjoy freedom without trembling. So tremble we do. But we do not lose heart. With Europe's growing self-reliance and strategic harmony with our US ally, we stand ready to deter, or if need be, to defeat anyone who will try to do us harm. Against the darkness of anomie and trickery, we must shine the light of international order and solidarity. Offers of peace through slyness and blackmail need to be countered with peace through strength and mutual reliance. We Europeans have long been known for our love of words, sometimes even ridiculed for producing paper worlds out of paper work. We now face a geopolitical reality that compels us to put our resources where our mouths are. The days of rusting armies are gone. Let me quote towards the end again Mircea Eliade, who, while serving as cultural attaché in the Romanian legation in Lisbon, kept a journal in which, in the early 1945, he wrote, quote, "The whole world is in flames. The fusion taking place today has only one advantage, that the metal liquefied at such great sacrifice can be poured into any kind of mold." End quote. Mutatis mutandis, this diagnosis applies to our present predicament too. The world order is quickly heating once again. What mold it will be cast into depends on the actions we take or fail to take in these coming days. Winston Churchill once quipped that the pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. From this, he rightly concluded that it is better to be an optimist, as it does not seem to be much use being anything else. Let this be our guiding spirit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you for your thorough assessment of the situation, for highlighting for us once again what's really at stake with the war against Ukraine. We have another 15 minutes for questions and answers. And without further ado, I invite my colleagues to take the floor, ask questions, make comments. I will kindly ask you to briefly introduce yourself. I have limited visibility over certain parts of the room. So the floor is now yours. Okay, I guess that's a lot to digest from what we've just heard, but if nobody else wants to... Minister Shikorski is with us, yeah? Okay. Deputy Prime Minister, I would like to follow up on something that Minister Soyu said at the very beginning. As you know, and as you have heard also today, Poland is Romania's most important partner on the eastern flank, a very strong ally, and we work together in NATO, within the European Union, and in many regional formats. And I might also say in this group of friends that we look at Poland oftentimes as a source of inspiration in terms of ambition and leadership at regional level and in Europe. And my question to you would be, how do you see Romania's role and the role of the Romanian diplomacy? Or in other words, what can we do more or better so that in partnership with Poland and with the Polish diplomacy, we assume an even greater contribution to solving the very difficult problems we are confronted with today?
Well, as I mentioned in my introductory remarks, we are the two largest countries of the Eastern flank, which is a an opportunity, but also a responsibility. We are clearly countries that are exporters of stability and of security. We were both in various expeditionary wars, and we have the capacity not only to defend our own territory, but also to project force abroad. We both, you much more than us, but we both feel responsible for the European integration of Moldova, with which we have historical links, and we see clearly the strategic importance of Ukraine. We also, I think, have less illusions than some of our allies about the nature of the Russian regime and the psychology and the calculus that the president of Russia is now making. So I feel that we are countries that are a voice for realism in approaching this war. I, for example, don't see any indication of this war in Ukraine coming to an end anytime soon. What I do see is a lot of wishful thinking about what Putin may or may not be thinking. So we have this duty on behalf of the smaller countries in our region to speak truth to power to the actually European allies have become much more realistic, but the United States sometimes sees Putin moving towards peace where I see him only playing games with us. Integrating Moldova, integrating Ukraine, our relationship with Turkey, these are all important missions. We are also, I think, both concerned about the trajectory that our neighbor, your close neighbor, our almost neighbor, Hungary is taking. So I think that's a commonality of values. When you add to that issues to do with energy security, issues to do with history, issues to do with agriculture, similar positions as regards the EU, we are still both budget and EU beneficiaries. That means we have an agenda towards both the EU and the United States where we push in the same directions.
Thank you very much for this. I'll now turn to my colleagues, and I see Ambassador Iulia Matei from the Permanent Representative of Romania to the EU. Iulia.
Minister Sikorski, hello to you, and I'm so pleased to see you and to have you today with us. It's always intellectually provocative to hear to your assessments and to listen to you. Well, you concluded in the way that we are facing a new geostrategic order. It's cutthroat geostrategic context, and it's not only for countries like us, Romania and Poland, but also for the EU as a whole to make to understand that we have a role to play. And if we are to look along in the history, we are seeing that the EU considered that being an economic power and being a trade partner is sufficient to impose our voice international. But as we see, we are marginal as EU when it comes to the Ukrainian peace talks. We are marginal when we are discussing about Middle East, not to say that China recently stated that they don't perceive us as being equal to them. So how do you see, what we definitely need to shift from this position and being an assistant, being in a supportive role and playing a crucial role as the EU. Where do you think that we could do better? This is my first question as EU, and where would you place Romania and Poland in this equation in order to have a stronger role also inside EU as neighboring countries and important countries on the eastern flank? Thank you.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more that the EU's prestige has not gone up recently, quite the contrary. I was convinced that we are an economic superpower equal to other power centers, and I was convinced that the EU Commission, representing us exclusively in the trade area, will be able to get a fair deal from the United States. As regards tariffs, we apparently have caved. Something, maybe it's the best deal that was possible, but it certainly is not better than what we had before. And in return, we are being forbidden to regulate or tax social media companies. So our trade in goods is being taxed, but America's export in services may not be taxed. That's not exactly a sign of our strength. And the same with China. Our companies are facing all kinds of shortages and blackmails, and we don't seem to be able to get our important trade partner to change its ways. On an extremely bad scenario, the triumvirate that will run the world will be US, China, Russia, with Europe as a sort of theme park and a market and a source of data rather than a power center. And the tragedy is that just at a time when we would need to develop unity of command and to be able to act in competition with other power centers, our politics has gone in an anti-European direction. I don't know about Romania, but in Poland, anti-Europeanism is stronger than before. So if we had a treaty similar to the European Constitution, or even Lisbon Treaty today, I couldn't promise you to be able to pass it in Poland. So we have a constitutional problem. We are a confederation, and we cannot act as quickly or as comprehensively as our competitors, and yet our publics will not let us do it. And that's not a recipe for success, and it's something that bothers me very much. We need to do a much better job in educating our public and making the case for a much more integrated Europe. Otherwise, our confederation, like all confederations in history, they either change into federations or they disappear. And I very much fear that that we are too paralyzed to survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you for your sobering yet thought-provoking intervention and for taking the time to be present with us today. We are looking forward to working even closer with Poland. We do not lose hope. We hope to be able to make a difference together within the European Union and within NATO. Thank you once again for being with us today.